This is the most important vote the country will face in its 2+ centuries. It's an opportunity to make good what was wrong. It is an opportunity to decisively move to a new chapter, move the country forward. So far as the recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders as the first peoples of this country, the country has had the switch on no. The default position has always been no. It was no in 1788, and it was no again in 1901 when Australia was created under the National Constitution. We've always said no when it comes to Indigenous peoples. We have a chance finally to say yes, that our founding document be amended to recognise the first peoples of Australia through a voice to the Parliament and the government. This will be, as I say, a decisive step forwards. An opportunity the like of which we won't see again until Halley's Comet returns. And when stars align like this, nations need to move with alacrity to seize the opportunity. It's not as if these things come up every so often. Indeed, the history of our struggle going back to the early part of the 20th century tells us very clearly that standing on the shoulders of those giants who struggled in an era of Australia that was absolutely more difficult than it is today. We stand on their shoulders to deliver one part of the agenda they had, and that is to seek our rightful place in this, our own land. We are on the cusp of doing it. I feel a real sense. After 6 weeks around the countryside in Tasmania, South Australia, Victoria, New South Wales and Queensland, I sense a real shift in momentum. On the eve of the campaign, we can count 25,000 volunteers. Actually, the largest mobilisation of volunteers in any political campaign. And every week going forward, we want to increase that number, because the most important thing lying between failure and success is the engagement of you and your preparedness to stand up for your country and your children's future. I must remind you, my people are only 3% of Australia. If we voted uniformly yes, we could not determine the outcome of this referendum. We're completely reliant on the 97% to step up. There's nothing we can do to influence the numbers. We require Australians to step up to the opportunity and the invitation from the Uluru Statement from the heart. I'm feeling good about this campaign. I think we're going to get there. But for our campaign to succeed, we must ever look forward, not backwards. We must look with hope and optimism and belief and trust rather than fear and prejudice. Our opponents are singing an angry song about the past, whereas we must sing a hymn of hope and belief in the country, in our fellow Australians, and in the kind of future we can bequeath to our grandchildren. We've been following the polls for 5 years, including polling within the Indigenous community, and it is absolutely clear that plus 80% of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people want this to happen. That is the truth. This Uluru Statement from the Heart was an invitation to the rest of the country that you join us in making this new future. We have a real opportunity to make the country better. And I'm really counting, we are all really counting on each other to seize what is now an opportunity in very close prospect. I want to read a statement given to me by Dr. Saeed Mujahid Hashimi, the president of the Gold Coast Afghan community, because it represents a response to the Uluru Statement from the Heart. And it is such a heart-warming and hopeful response that I believe I should share it with you. He said, on behalf of the Gold Coast Afghan community, he says, my fellow First Nations people, in response to the Uluru Statement from the Heart, we, the Gold Coast Afghan community, answer your call to walk alongside you. I speak not merely as an individual, but as the united voice of our community. In response to the deeply stirring Uluru Statement from the Heart, our hearts brim with emotions of pain, solidarity, and hope. Both our histories, distinct yet intertwined, sing songs of perseverance, courage, and a profound desire for rightful acknowledgement in this land we cherish. Our forefathers, the Afghan Kamalias, journeyed through Australia's vast deserts, forming an indelible bond with its original custodians, weaving tales of unity and mutual respect with every step. As they journeyed, their stories seamlessly melded with the ancient tales of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Today, the echoing cries of many Afghans reverberate in our souls. Having stood side by side with Australia in its mission in Afghanistan, they now find themselves forgotten, their voices silenced, their futures shrouded in uncertainty, their painful struggle for recognition eerily reminiscent of the profound pain and aspirations of the First Nations people, serves as a reminder that we must never let history repeat itself. The powerful bond between the land and its First Nations custodians is irrefutable. Their sovereignty and spiritual connection, overshadowed for so long, beckons for acknowledgement. Your heartfelt pleas for justice, recognition, and empowerment resonate deeply within us. Your plea for a Makarrata Commission stands as a testament to your unwavering spirit, symbolising hope for healing unity, and a future where all Australians stand together. The echoes from 1967 are deafening, and now more than ever, it's imperative that we not only count, but sincerely listen. We, the Gold Coast Afghan community, have heard your call. With tear-filled eyes, open hearts, and resolute spirits, we pledge to walk with you. Together, hand in hand, let us create a path where every silenced voice finds its song, every forgotten history its stage, and every dream its rightful place in the sun. I've always believed that Australia has three stories. Firstly, its Indigenous story, the foundations of the country, a heritage going back 60,000 plus years. That's the first story of Australia. The second story of Australia is the story that started in 1788. When the British democracy eventually became embedded in our national constitution and became the law of the land. That is the second story. That is also irrefutable. It's the fact of history. It's the fact of Australia. And that third story is this glorious multicultural unity that we've built in this country. Those three stories make up Australia. If we had a mirror big enough to all look into, we would see that reflected back at us. The three intertwining stories of the Indigenous heritage, the British Constitution, and the multicultural unity. I believe when we put that first piece of the puzzle of Australia together with this referendum, we will see not just Indigenous recognition, but we will see the whole. We will see Australia and our place in it. And this will be a profound benefit to future generations. Our children won't have hang-ups and uncertainties and alienations and antipathies because we simply have not told them what it is to be Australian. With this referendum, we are going to see the whole, and we're going to see ourselves within it. That is why recognition is not just important for Indigenous people, it's important for the whole country. So I'm so tremendously pleased that Prime Minister Albanese picked up the ball on this. And by the way, when I talk to Southern audiences, the metaphor doesn't work. Prime Minister Albanese picked up the ball and he's run with it. It's not a ball of his creation. He picked up the ball that the Uluru Statement from the Heart asked him to pick up, which is that we want recognition through a voice in the democracy. And he has faithfully picked up that ball, and we are going to take it to the try line in this referendum campaign. Let me just say, as a last statement, that the most important thing I think you can do with your fellow Australians is to take them through the words of the actual amendment. This is what we're voting for. It's these words that we're being asked to authorise. So it's absolutely crucial that you get your head around the provision and that you have conversations with your family, friends, strangers in the mall, strangers at the train station, strangers at the bus stop, at church, about this four-part provision. And I like to think about the 92 words that the provision amounts to as falling under four headings. One, there's the recognition heading. And the recognition is very straightforward. It's in recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the first peoples of Australia. That is as straight and as clear as you can get. And which Australian would harden their heart to that? In recognition as the first peoples of Australia. They may seem like simple words, but it is in a profoundly heavy-duty document. So those words have a meaning that the document gives it, which is that they are of fundamental importance to the country. And they are words that the Australian people have authorised, not the Parliament, not the government, but the 17.5 million voters will authorise this in our Constitution. That's why the words are so profound. The second provision deals with a guarantee. It represents a guarantee from the Australian people to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And that guarantee is there shall be a body to be called the Voice. That's the constitutional guarantee, that there shall be a body to be called the Voice. The third part is, what is the purpose of the Voice? Well, the purpose of the Voice, in the words plainly set out, is to make representations to the Parliament and the executive government on matters relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Not nuclear submarines, not whether or not you can dodge a parking ticket on the Gold Coast. All of these lurid imaginings on television and in the commentaries in the papers. It's about matters relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And making representations is like Democracy 101. Everybody makes representations to the Parliament. And the Parliament may or may not listen. And the government may or may not listen to representations. The Voice is going to have to be smart, clever, strategic, agile, politically aware in order to get its representations listened to and acted upon. The fact that it is in the Constitution will help, but there is no obligation on the part of the Parliament to accept representations made by the Voice. We're getting involved in the business of democracy. That's what the Voice will do. Contribute from the outside of the Parliament to the democratic processes of the country. And finally, there's the question of details. Where are these details? Mr. Dutton is looking for the details because someone is hiding the details. Well, the provision reads like this: the Parliament shall have power to make laws. That's the detail. It's the Parliament that has the power to make laws about the composition, functions powers and procedures of the voice. Now, there's lots of ideas been developed and a lot of work been done over the years about what this voice might look like. But at the end of the day, it is what the Parliament legislates that is the key. That will be the voice. It's not even the government's power under the Constitution. The government might have an idea, but they've got to get it through the Parliament, through the Senate, which they don't control. The making of the detail is the Parliament's function. So Senator Hanson, Senator Price, Mr. Dutton, Mr. Albanese, Senator Watt, they're the people who will furnish the detail when they make the voice law. And they'll make the voice law after the referendum. I'll just allow you to think of one analogy, and that is the ABC. The Australian Broadcasting Corporation was created in 1932 under a constitutional power. And the Parliament of the day legislated an act called the Australian Broadcasting Commission Act. 10 years later, in the middle of the war, they amended the legislation. And many, many years later, in 1983, they scrapped the old act and put in a new act called the Australian Broadcasting Corporation Act. You see, the constitutional power stays the same, but the legislation is a matter for the Parliament. And if the Parliament decides sometime down the track to change the voice legislation, they have full power to do that. Now, I'm still trying to work out whether Mr. Dutton actually understands this, or whether he is being deliberately ignorant. He just doesn't understand his parliamentary function. I'll leave it to you to decide. I just want to say that we're now in full sight. We're in the last quarter of the game. I feel really good going around the countryside. There are places where 6 weeks ago it was, the mood was a bit despondent in some places, and I've gone back there and the place is brimming with hope, energy, a real genuine feeling that we can do this. So I want to commend to you this campaign that's now in sight, and I want to urge you to join the Yes 23 campaign. Go to the website. There are many ways in which you can contribute to the campaign, the most important of which is to volunteer. And I want to thank once again the traditional owners and Megan and Murray for the kindness they've given me this evening. Thank you.